Hello, I'm back, and today I would like to talk a little bit about migrations and a particular aspect in designing properly migrations. Because in an automated migration, so when we build a transpiler to take our source code and translate it into code written in another language, we will encounter some mismatch. Mismatch in the level of what is possible to express and how. What do I mean by that? If we encounter an if statement in the original language, most probably we have an if statement also in the target language. That's very simple. The conversion is one-to-one. But it could happen that things that we couldn't express directly in the original language are expressed through a series of elements, a series of expressions, statements. So we have a little pattern or idioms that we could map to a single element in the target language. So in this case, this is very good because we are making the resulting code more concise, easier to maintain, and also easier to understand typically. But it could happen also the other way around, so that we have something that in the original language I could express directly with a single construct and for which there is no direct equivalent in the target language. So maybe in the target language I can express it through a series of elements, so making the code less concise. And this may happen because we may be translating from languages that were very specialized, that there was sort of domain-specific language to perform certain tasks. Let's think about RPG or EGL, which have specific support for working essentially with records, right? So maybe if we are translating this to Java, we may need to translate a field in the best case scenario as a field, a getter, a setter. Maybe there is impact on the equals method, the toString, the hash code, and so on. And so I'm not even mentioning overlaying fields and other stuff like that. So sometimes we have this undesirable side effect that we move to a language that maybe has a stronger community, there are more developers, but some of the things that we express in the original language leverage some special capabilities of the original language and therefore were maybe more concise and more uh, concisely defined in the original language. Are there way to avoid that when migrating, for example, to Java? Well, uh, there are a few. For example, one could use reflection. For example, I could generate, let's say that I need to generate, that normally in a migration I may write a serialize method and deserialize, for example. I may instead writing one version of this method in a base class that will look at annotation and through reflection, let's say at runtime, will define the logic to serialize or deserialize the records. That will be more maintainable because when I would add or remove or change a field in my record, automatically the serialize method will keep working. While if I have explicitly generated the code, then I will need to change the generated code, right? However, this has an effect on performance. So an alternative may be using annotation processors or even tools like Manifold that provide a series of capabilities like, for example, operator overloading. That could be very convenient if you write mathematical expressions that are complex and you don't want to use big decimal because for mathematical expressions that are complex, the resulting expressions are really clunky. But with operator overloading, you can have much nicer to see operations. So there are all these meta programming solutions. The simplest one may be Lombok, but there are all these solutions that sort of let you bend the language you're using. In this example, Java, but there are similar reasoning one could do for Python using decorators, or is decorator the name using TypeScript, but they're all the same thing, more or less. So I think that when planning migrations, you need to take into consideration these possibilities. Then which one is the best depends also on the culture that there is at the company. There are companies love annotation processor, there are companies that in their technical culture there is no space for such tools. So my message is that on one end, it's very important that you discuss this with the company that will eventually maintain the code base. So they should have a say in making this decision. And this is why you cannot apply one transpiler to solve every problem, in my opinion. And the second point is that when planning this migration, you need to have a conversation between the company implementing the transpiler and the company maintaining the migrated code, in case there are different people. And these people need to be familiar with all these alternatives to assess which is the right solution. So yes, you need to be very familiar with the ecosystem that you're targeting, at least. So yeah, it's a lot of fun, a lot of work, a lot of possibilities, and a lot of decision to take, I guess. But I hope it was vaguely interesting. And as always, if you have feedback, comments, and so on, just let me know. Have a great day. Bye.